Norway seems like a fairy tale for nature lovers. Aurora borealis, impressive fjords, and majestic mountains. A true paradise, right? But behind these landscapes, there is a dark side that few mention. For foreigners, living in Norway can be much more challenging than it seems. That's why, today, Bello Mundo is going to reveal the dark side of this country that looks so perfect in photos. What you discover could completely change your view of Norway. Are you ready to discover the dark side of this frozen paradise? There are plenty of reasons to want to move to Norway. As well as stunning landscapes, the country is known for its impeccable infrastructure and is undoubtedly one of the most developed and prosperous places in the world, with salaries that may seem unreal. Just to give you an idea, even Norwegian prisons are reputed to look like luxury resorts. The notorious Halden prison, for example, offers accommodation that includes a plasma TV, minibar, and even a culinary laboratory. Perhaps it's an exaggeration, but in Norway, even the bad guys have an above-average standard of living. But not all that glitters is gold. According to Expat Insider 23, one of the largest global studies on expatriate life, which gathers data from thousands of people around the world, Norway is far from being the fairy tale that many imagine. The country came 52nd out of the 53 countries analyzed. And the reasons? Oh, there are many. Number 1. High cost of living. One of the first things anyone notices when arriving in Norway is the price of practically everything. The cost of living there is among the highest in Europe, and basic expenses such as rent, food, and transportation can make any foreigner think twice before moving. Want an example? Living in Oslo, the capital, can be very expensive. A one-bedroom apartment in the center can easily exceed $1,500, and we're talking about a very small place, sometimes less than 30 square meters. If you need more space, such as a house or a family apartment, the price ranges from $1,200 to $1,900. And it's not just the rent that's a burden. Most contracts require an advance deposit of 1 to 3 months, in addition to the first month's payment. In other words, before you even open your suitcases, your pocket will already be lighter. And public transportation? Not far behind. A bus or metro ticket costs around $4 per trip, and a monthly pass can cost up to $120, depending on the city and coverage zones. Another myth worth debunking is that Norway's health system is not completely free. Everyone pays for consultations and medicines, but only up to an annual limit of around $230. After that, healthcare is free. And as if all that wasn't enough, eating out is practically a luxury. A simple meal can be very expensive, and we're not even talking about drinks or desserts, which are absurdly priced. But that topic deserves a separate chapter, and we'll talk about it in a moment. And be prepared, when your paycheck arrives, taxes can take almost half of your salary. Number 2. High taxes. Another aspect that can scare anyone who wants to live in Norway is the high taxes. In fact, taxes are the price of living in Norway. Tax revenue is the basis of the country's public sector, guaranteeing high-quality health and education services, as well as transportation infrastructure and environmental protection. But this quality of life comes at a price. Income taxes can exceed 40% of your salary, depending on your income bracket. For many, almost half of their salary goes directly to the government. In addition, there is a wealth tax that further impacts higher incomes, something unusual in other countries. Although Norwegian public services are excellent, for many foreigners this tax burden comes as a shock. What seemed like an economic paradise can quickly turn into a reality of heavy financial burdens. Number 3. expensive alcoholic beverages sold by the government. If high taxes already scare you, wait until you try to buy a beer. In Norway, drinking is an expensive and highly controlled privilege. Alcoholic drinks are so expensive that, for many, they become a luxury. And no, that's not an exaggeration. Drinking a glass of wine in a bar can cost around $10, and a beer hardly costs less than $8. Buying from the supermarket may seem like a cheaper option, but there's a catch. The drink must have less than 5% alcohol content. Now, if you want something stronger, like wines or spirits, get ready to go to Vinmonopolet, a state-owned chain that has a monopoly on the sale of alcoholic beverages with more than 5% alcohol. This means you can't buy your favorite drink in any supermarket at any time. The government totally controls the sale of alcohol, which results in sky-high prices and time restrictions. Number 4. Eating out is expensive. Just like having a beer or a glass of wine, eating out is an exorbitant expense. So if you don't know how to cook and want to live in Norway, my advice is learn. Eating out is a real challenge. Restaurant prices are sky-high, a reflection of the high salaries paid to staff. This means that even the simplest options, such as fast food, are expensive. Just to give you an idea, a casual, unpretentious dinner can easily exceed $200, even in restaurants that aren't considered luxurious. That's why many foreigners prefer to cook at home. Although supermarket prices are also high, they are still much cheaper than eating out regularly. Number 5. Almost non-existent evening activities. If you're one of those who love going out at night, dancing until dawn and clubbing, I'm sorry to tell you, Norway may not be the place of your dreams. Here, nightlife is practically a myth. In the smaller towns, forget it. After work, everyone seems to disappear and silence takes over. And there's more. Norwegians are very strict when it comes to drinking. Drinking during the week. No way. They leave this extravagance to Fridays and Saturdays. So, when the weekend finally arrives, a friend or colleague might ask you out for a drink around 5 or 6 in the afternoon. But that early? Yes, because the bars close at 2 o'clock in the morning, so it's either start early or stay late. Another thing, fancy a beer? You're on your own, because here the rule is clear. Every man for himself. That's how they see it. No one owes anyone anything. And if you, a foreigner, get asked out, count yourself blessed. Being invited to something by a Norwegian is almost like winning the lottery. Which brings us to our next topic. Number 6. Introverted Norwegians. Have you ever heard that Norwegians are cold? Well, this reputation doesn't come out of nowhere. They're known for being very reserved, and making friends there can be more difficult than facing winter without a jacket. They are polite and respectful, but don't expect much conversation or excitement right away. If you're the type who loves to chat in the elevator, you'll feel the difference. They prefer to keep their personal lives away from any superficial interaction. This makes many foreigners feel like they're always on the outside, unable to really enter the social circle. But it's not just the reserve of the Norwegians that attracts attention, it's their prejudice and superiority. Number 7. No talking to foreigners, especially if you're a tourist. Right. Now, here's a truth that takes many by surprise. Norwegians aren't always the friendliest to tourists or foreigners. If you're just visiting, you might think they're polite, but moving there is another story. First of all, they think they're superior. In 2018, the Pew Research Center surveyed people from various countries, asking about cultural superiority. In Norway, 58% of respondents agreed that their culture is superior to others. the highest percentage among the European countries surveyed. In short, they think they're the best. And secondly, it's not always just about culture. Stories of foreigners being greeted with offensive comments are common. People from Russia, Ecuador, and Brazil have already reported episodes of condescension. Things like, "That's soap," or "That's a computer," something you probably don't have in your country, as if they were talking to someone from the Middle Ages. And for those of African or Muslim origin, racism can be even more evident. Decades of stereotypes and prejudices fed by a biased media are still reflected in everyday interactions, making it clear that for some, acceptance is a long way off. But just as difficult as coexistence is bureaucracy. Number 8. Bureaucratic for foreigners. The Norwegian administration has its advantages. After all, the system is almost entirely digitalized and works with enviable efficiency. But only if you're Norwegian. Now, if you weren't born there and are coming from outside the European Union, things take a different turn. Imagine this. You've got a job, found an apartment you like, and here comes the fun part. Opening a bank account and getting your resident ID. Easy, right? But no, the saga begins. For those who are not from the European Union, the process can be a real test of patience. Opening a bank account or getting your ID involves a mountain of documents, multiple comings and goings, and can take weeks or even months. The upside: once you're in the system, everything flows wonderfully smoothly. But until then, it's good to light a candle and say a prayer. Number 9. Difficulty for foreigners to get a job. And if all these cons weren't enough to put you off so far, considering Norway's high level of development and tempting salaries, here's one more obstacle: getting a job. Without a job, all that promise of quality of life isn't worth much, is it? Finding a job in Norway isn't exactly easy. The process depends on many factors, such as the type of visa, the industry, and yes, even your nationality. For many foreigners, the path is much more complicated than it seems. Although Norway has a strong economy, the job market can be quite challenging for non-locals, especially if you don't speak Norwegian. Although many Norwegians speak English, mastering the local language is still crucial for most jobs, and the competition is fierce. Companies often give preference to candidates from Norway or the European Union, leaving expats outside this bubble at a disadvantage. But that doesn't mean it's impossible. There are sectors where qualified professionals are always in demand, such as nursing, engineering, and the automotive industry. However, in these fields, speaking Norwegian, Danish, or Swedish is almost always a requirement. Number 10. Language. And while we're on the subject of language, this is another pebble in the shoe for anyone venturing into Norwegian lands. Although English is widely spoken in the country, learning Norwegian is essential if you really want to integrate and feel part of society. However, for speakers of Latin languages, such as Portuguese or Spanish, Norwegian can be a real challenge. Apart from the unfriendly grammar, what really complicates matters are the countless dialects that vary from one region to another. So even if you start to get the hang of it, it's very likely that in a new city things will change completely. Then you have to learn everything all over again. And for those who already speak English, don't think it will be much easier, as adapting to Norwegian can be slower than expected. The sound of words, the structure of sentences, everything seems like a puzzle. Number 11. No Amazon. Another point that can frustrate many foreigners is shopping online. If you're used to the convenience of receiving your Amazon purchases in a day or two, Norway might surprise you. There is no Amazon here. Of course, you can try to buy from other countries, such as the UK or Germany. But be prepared to pay expensive freight and wait weeks for your purchase to arrive. And what's worse, not all products are shipped to Norway, which can severely limit your options. Not to mention the fact that that bargain could end up being much more expensive than expected, thanks to import duties and shipping costs. So if you like the convenience of online shopping, you'll need to adjust your expectations or explore your local shops more. Number 12. Almost 24 hours of sunshine in summer. And as if all the challenges already mentioned weren't enough, Norway also brings some extreme surprises of nature. Among the most fascinating phenomena are the aurora borealis, the polar night, and of course the midnight sun. Since the aurora is yet another gift from nature and can in no way be seen as a negative, let's go straight to the midnight sun. In the northernmost regions of the country, during the summer, the sun never sets. It shines all day, and yes, it stays strong all night. That moment at 2 in the morning when you just want to sleep, but the sun is up as high as noon, becomes a challenge in itself. For those who love to make the most of the day, this constant light can seem like a blessing. But for many, it's a different story. The sleep cycle is thrown into disarray. Number 13. Polar night in winter. If in summer you face the sun never setting, in winter the scenario is the complete opposite. In the same northern regions, it's the polar night that takes over. And when we say night, that's literally it. During the winter, the sun simply disappears. It doesn't rise over the horizon for weeks. In some areas, it can last for months. Although it's a fascinating phenomenon that attracts curious tourists from all over the world, the polar night can affect the mental health of those who live there. The lack of sunlight affects the mood, causing fatigue, discouragement, and even depression. Number 14. Extreme cold. And finally, we can't talk about living in Norway without mentioning the brutal cold. During the winter months, temperatures plummet to well below zero, especially in the northernmost regions. For many, the cold is one of the biggest obstacles to living in the country. The weather is unpredictable. Even in summer, it can snow in some places. Temperatures can jump from 25 degrees Celsius to 8 degrees simply from one moment to the next. And with climate change, rainfall is becoming even more intense. In other words, it's always best to be prepared for anything. But if you think these temperatures are a challenge, wait until you experience winter in Svalbard, the Norwegian archipelago halfway between mainland Norway and the North Pole, where temperatures can drop to -20 degrees Celsius or even lower. But in addition to the bitter cold, there's also an extended polar night. For 3 months, the sun disappears and darkness takes over. But what makes this region even more intriguing is the fact that it is forbidden to be born or die. Yes, you heard right. There are laws for that. Are you curious? We have a special video about Svalbard here on the channel. Don't miss the chance to find out more about this place that seems straight out of a science fiction movie. But now tell us, did you enjoy discovering these interesting facts about Norway? Tell us in the comments which one surprised you the most. If you liked this content, don't forget to like it, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel for more curiosities from our Bello Mundo. For those of you who have watched this far, thank you very much and see you next time.